So recently, in the MMA world, there have been several different things going on. And in this video, I want to talk about all of the recent headlines that have kind of been going on because the UFC is just in an interesting spot right now, man. It's in an interesting spot, and it just feels like the UFC really needs to try to get things under control because we have fighters out here that are in no way, shape, or form in position to be calling for title shots, and they are, which we'll discuss all that. We have the new ranking system, which is supposedly unbelievable, and the new ranking system, it's unbelievable, blah, blah, blah. It's garbage. It's absolute bogus. So we'll talk about that and why I think the ranking system is the way it is. We'll discuss all that in this video. Then we'll take a look at some other different things like Topuria and Khabib and all those different kinds of things. So stick around. Let's hop into this. Starting straight away, unreliable sources, right? Homa Fight came out here and they, put out a little apology here. This is not me coming after Homa Fight, but this is something that has become a new thing, really. I mean, not new, but it's popping up more than ever in the MMA world, is these outlets that may or may not be legit reporting different things like this TASS, which, is being said it is an unreliable source. And they're putting stuff out there saying that this is coming from Islam's team, this is coming from Hamzat's team, and it's riling everybody up, right? Because it's stuff that sounds kind of legit or sounds like there could be some truth to it, or is it real, right? Because we're seeing all these other outlets post about it, and it is just kind of what seems like an unreliable source that got everyone all riled up for no reason. So can't stand when this happens. This is just something that is really starting to become normal here. And obviously, Homa Fight didn't mean to, to give us false information here, because a lot of other people were talking about, what was being said here by TASS. So, just hopefully we could get that under control, man, because these sources coming out saying all these different things, firing everybody up, and then we come to find out that, it's just bogus. Shit sucks, man. Shit sucks. So hopefully, I don't know. It's just frustrating. Pound for pound rankings. Look, I don't think that this is a horrible pound for pound rankings list. I don't think it could be worse, right? I feel like we've seen worse before. Obviously, Islam Makhachev is pound for pound number one. I would argue and say that Ilia Topuria is number two. I get that resume-wise, in the span of his entire career, Jon Jones has a top-tier resume, obviously, but I thought that the current pound for pound rankings were supposed to be based on what have you done for me lately? What are you currently doing in the UFC at present? And Jon Jones has had two fights over the past, several years it's been. He moved up to heavyweight, dominated Cyril Gane, okay. And then he goes out there and takes on a beyond his prime Stipe Miocic, a fight that nobody wanted to see. And that somehow keeps him at the number two spot. I don't get it. Look, and then the rest of it here, Merab at 4, DDP at 5, Ankalaev 6, Bilal 7, Pereira 8, kind of all interchangeable in my opinion. The one that I don't think is interchangeable is how in the world is Alexandre Pantoja ranked at number 10? This guy, to me, he could be in the top 5. He should be ahead of Merab. He could be ahead of DDP. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's a flyweight, right? We know flyweights don't always get the pound for pound respect that they deserve. But this guy has an unbelievable resume. How many title defenses now? How many title wins recently? I mean, Pantoja's been on an absolute tear. Nobody's got the answer for this guy. I like Volkanovski. We all do. How is he ahead of Pantoja? I know he did great things before, but he was KO'd in his past two fights. Yeah, he went out there and put on a great performance against Lopez. How's he ahead of Pantoja? So really, I understand. I think Sarukian should be higher than Oliveira. And like I said, a lot of it is just kind of opinion-based. But I believe Islam is the pound-for-pound number one fighter. I believe Ilia Topuria is the pound-for-pound number two fighter, considering coming off of the 2 KO wins that he's had. And I just don't understand how Pantoja is all the way back there at 10. That is crazy to me. Like I said, Ankalaev is a new champion. Bilal is a new champion. When he defends the title, I'm sure that will elevate him as well. DDP being up there, he's defended the title a few times. Merab, same thing. So again, I see that there. How in the world is Pantoja at 10? That's my point. I don't get it. The disrespect towards Pantoja, man, is absolutely crazy. Put some respect on the guy's name. The featherweight ranking nonsense. I saw this yesterday, and I about blew a gasket. Because, all this nonsense from the UFC and Dana White talking about how the rankings are going to be improved, and we're going to have all this new technology and all this and that, man. As far as I'm concerned, the rankings just might be worse than the worst it's ever been. I mean, this is crazy. We have Alexander Volkanovski, who obviously is the champion, so he's going to be at the top. Max Holloway is the number 1 featherweight right now. He left the division. He said that his future's at lightweight. We have Ilia Topuria, who's ranked number 3, who vacated the title and is now moving to lightweight. Why is Max and Ilia in the rankings at all? Why are they in the rankings at all? And then the one that really, really, really sets me the hell off. How in the world is Movsar Evloev and Yair Rodriguez tied at 4? Since when do we have ties in the rankings? Let me know below. Have we ever had ties in the rankings? I don't remember that. And even if, this isn't a damn tie. How is this a tie? We have an undefeated Movsar Evloev, who should be fighting Volkanovski next for the title, tied with Yair Rodriguez. But you notice the placement? You notice the placement, how it's Yair ahead, and then it's Movsar at 4? And then we have Arnold Allen at 6 underneath. We have Topuria at 3 above there. I mean, obviously, Topuria shouldn't be in the rankings. He's not a featherweight anymore. But my point, it seems to me like this was like, oh, well, if we have Yair at 4 and Movsar 5, that's going to create all sorts of buzz and all sorts of negativity. So what we need to do is we'll just we'll tie him at 4. What sense does that make? And you notice the placement, Yair being here and Movsar there. To me, this is being looked at as Yair 4, Movsar 5 by the UFC. That's just me speculating in my opinion there, because this doesn't make any sense. How is Movsar Evloev not the number 1 ranked guy? He should be ahead of Lopez right now. And I know when you fight for the title and you lose, you stay at that 1 or 2 spot. Lopez being at 2, why is Holloway 1? Just got KO'd by Ilia Topuria, said his future's at lightweight. Movsar Evloev is the number 1 contender. He should be fighting for the title next. And the fact that Yair and Movsar are tied is a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace. It makes no sense to me. Yair Rodriguez just got subbed by Brian Ortega, got beat up by Alexander Volkanovski, went out there and outpointed Patricio Pitbull. Ooh. And he's tied with Movsar Evloev, who's undefeated, has wins over Arnold Allen, has wins over Aljamain Sterling. It's not a damn tie. So my point, and what I've been saying time and time again, the UFC is going to try to utilize the ranking system to try to justify title shots that don't particularly make sense. We've already seen them, which we're going to get to in a minute here. Yair Rodriguez campaigning for a title fight with Volkanovski, considering, he came off a win over Patricio Pitbull, and, he wants to get that one back on Volk. And, the UFC is going to utilize the rankings as a weapon, per se. They're going to use it as a tactic to almost take advantage of the casual and to draw the casuals in, so when they see the rankings, they're like, Yair Rodriguez, he's ranked 4 and he's fighting for the title? That's not bad. That makes sense. He's number 4, because remember when, I believe this was before the whole new ranking system kind of took off, we had Khalil Roundtree fighting Alex Pereira, and at the time Roundtree was ranked 8. It should have been Ankalaev, but there was all this backlash because, we all knew that it was going to be fun stylistically, but we had the number 1 guy who should have, and Ankalaev, who should have been fighting for the title then. But then they gave Roundtree, who was outside the top 5, was ranked number 8, and they gave him a title shot. So the UFC, it seems to me like they said, you know what? When it comes to the rankings, if we can somehow spin some of these guys into that top 5 range, we can then make it seem like it makes more sense to give a title shot to the people that aren't super in tune with the sport, because we know nowadays a large part of the audience, they're not in the weeds, man. They really don't even remember Yair's last fight, or they remember the last fight but don't remember that he lost a couple before that. And it's just crazy, and they run off of BS narratives, and it's just the rankings are a disaster. That's the point, and in my opinion, that's what it seems like, because we heard Yair Rodriguez saying, the UFC, Hunter Campbell, they told me I'm next, and then we see the rankings here. He beats Patricio Pitbull, who, he was a really good featherweight outside of the UFC over in Bellator. He has no UFC credential so far, other than the fact that he lost to Yair, and that catapults Yair to number 4, and has Movsar tied? Craziness. The rankings, to me, this completely shows that the rankings are unreliable and nonsense. Absolute bullshit. When I saw this, I lost my mind. Okay, Movsar, he's game, man. He's as game as it gets. I've been up here saying for the longest time. The issue with Movsar is this, okay? I'm a fan of Movsar Evloev. I like his style. I think that he is a very elite fighter. I think that his skill set is very troubling for every single fighter at 145 pounds. My worry from Movsar has always been the fact that he has the skill set, obviously, but it's the decision, always continuously going to decisions, that I'm afraid and have been afraid is going to hurt him when it comes to getting the title shot. Now, having said that, that should not hinder a fighter from getting their title opportunity. But my point, we've seen guys that you could, like Magomed Ankalaev, who's knocked people out, is known for being a striker. We saw Bilal finish Sean Brady. We saw Merab go on a nice run. We've seen guys really put some wins together and be the true number one contender, and the UFC gives them the runaround. They give them the work, they give them the hard route. They make them do something extra, it seems, time and time again, to try to just get to the title fight that they have earned. Movsar Evloev has earned the title shot, and to make it even better, this guy is out here. He should absolutely be fighting Alexander Volkanovski next. He sits here and says, Yair Rodriguez and Jean Silva to go through Movsar if they want a title shot. If you have a contender who deserves it more than I, just let me test him. So Movsar Evloev has obviously been vocal that he believes that he is next in line, which it shouldn't even be a debate. It's not a debate. Movsar Evloev is the number one contender. He's undefeated. He's recently beaten Arnold Allen, that incredible back and forth with Aljamain Sterling. He put himself in position for a title shot. Volkanovski has specifically said, I want to fight Movsar. And that's what I liked about Volk and Diego coming into this fight. They were recognizing Movsar and that they wanted to fight him next. He's undefeated. He's a puzzle. No one has figured him out yet. I think that a guy, especially like Volkanovski, likes to challenge. My point has been this. Movsar is elite, but the fact that he has not had a finish at least, I think, is something that is hurting him in terms of how the UFC is looking at it. But like I've said time and time again, that should not affect a fighter being able to get a title shot. If you are undefeated, if you are consistently beating top fighters in your weight class, and everyone else has basically already had their title shots, or like Volk's the champ now, he's already beaten Yair, he's already beaten a lot of these guys, Movsar Evloev is clearly the number one guy. But the fact that he's saying, if you want to give me one of these contenders to prove who actually is the legit number one guy, even though Movsar is, that's badass. Tells you everything you need to know about the guy. Movsar versus Volk is absolutely the fight that should happen next. And that's a banger, man. Like I said, Evloev, he's a hard stylistic matchup for everyone in the division. I'm excited to see how that would play out with Volkanovski. Undeserved title shots. So we're starting to see this a lot more, right? And a lot of this kind of stems from, and it's kind of reheating because of what we're about to get into with all the different fighters, especially on Ariel Helwani's show, to where they're talking about, I earned a title shot. I'm next in line. I'm this, I'm that. The UFC has set a precedent, and I talked about this, several months ago, that once you start to once you start to allow certain things, then other fighters are going to see that and say, you know what? I'm going to see if I can get that too. I'm going to see if I can get that special treatment. I'm going to see if I can skip the line. I'm going to see if they'll budge and give me what I want, because why wouldn't I try? And I can't even blame the fighters. Hell, if I made my debut in the UFC and I won one fight, I might be calling for a title shot. Because that seems like what everyone is doing nowadays. But the problem is the UFC has allowed this. They've allowed this, and we're all going to complain, right, which we'll get to it, right, again, and a lot of this is circulating because Movsar should be fighting for the title, and we have Yair saying he wants a shot and all this and that. Undeserved title shots. We had Kai Asakura, who hadn't even fought one time in the UFC, get walked right into a title shot. And I know the argument was, well, Flyweight's got nobody, man. Flyweight's got nobody. Yeah, because you got rid of one of your top up-and-coming guys in Muhammad Makhachev. And you also, yes, there were recycled rematches, but there were other guys. You just chose to go with someone new, a new kid on the block. And then they gave Steve Erceg a title shot when he was the number 10 ranked guy. And then we have Sean O'Malley, who's going right back into a title fight against Merab after he just lost. And then a cherry-picked title defense against Marlon Chito Vera. So the UFC is allowing this, man. They're allowing this, and it's not going to change. It's not going to change unless the UFC puts their foot down, because once you allow something for someone, then it starts to open the door for other fighters to see that there might be a little bit of wiggle room here. Let me see if I can call for a shot. Let me see if I can get, convince the UFC or try to change their mind or whatever it is. So again, can't really blame the fighters, right? Because we've seen they budge. And I'm sick of people saying at flyweight, there's no one else. We have, Manel Cap. We had Makhachev. I don't know if, hopefully he'll be back in the UFC. There's other fighters. Joshua Van's starting to make a name for himself. Joshua Van should earn a title shot before Kyle Sakura. You know, I know that these fighters who have big names in other promotions, they come over and it's like, we need to see a little something first. I know that they're usually here for a good time, not a long time, and I get that, but you shouldn't walk right into a title shot. Steve Erceg should not be ranked 10 getting a title shot. He didn't beat anybody. It's not like he was ranked 10 and fought someone inside the top 5 or something like that to get the title shot. He KO'd Matt Schnell, I think, right? And that's basically what got him the title shot. Big whoop. Big whoop. The O'Malley one, you could have maybe more of an argument considering, you know, what we've seen with the Asakura and Erceg, you know, title shots. And these are just a few that I'm coming up with here off the top of my head, but you get the point. Undeserved title shots, the UFC has to put their foot down because if they don't, this thing's going to get really out of control, and we're seeing it now. We're seeing it now. Jean Silva, you know, he's on Ariel Helwani's show saying, you know, I think the right thing to do is to go directly to the belt. I believe I have the credentials. I actually believe that between me and Volk, we would have a fantastic fight. I think this would be a good fight for me. I could probably go for a knockout in the first or second round. Now, here's the thing. Silva versus Volkanovski, that would be a fun fight. Of course it would be a fun fight, but he doesn't deserve a title shot. He fought his first ranked opponent in Bryce Mitchell, and he thinks he deserves a title shot after that. That is what, because of the UFC allowing certain things to slide, they had showed the new kids on the block, the new blood that is coming into the organization, the new generations of fighter, that if you come in, you show that you have some charisma, you have a little bit of a character that you're playing, you have the personality, you draw people in, as long as you go out there and beat one person in the rankings, you get a title shot. Now here's the deal. If Jean Silva would have fought someone inside the top 5 and beaten them, like if he would have fought, you know, if they gave him Movsar Evloev, which that fight wouldn't have happened, but you get my point. If they gave him an Arnold Allen or something crazy inside the top 5 and he went out there and knocked them out, then you have a case for a title shot. That's where I look at that and I go, okay, like when Khamzat went up to middleweight, they give him Robert Whittaker. He goes in there, steamrolls him. Now we're talking about a title shot. Umar Nurmagomedov gets the number 1 contender in Corey Sandhagen, beats him. You're in position for a title shot. Those are the opportunities to me that put you in position for a title shot. If Silva was a bantamweight and he was a champion and he was doing all sorts of things and he moved up like Ilia Topuria is trying to do, I think that inserts you into a title conversation. But when you're new to the organization, when you're, in positions like this, who have you fought? Yeah, he beat Bryce Mitchell. I was impressed. I've been impressed with Jean Silva, right? You don't get a title shot yet. Now, if they put him in there against, Arnold Allen or Lerone Murphy or someone in the top of the division or maybe Diego Lopez or Yair Rodriguez and he gets a win there, then the conversation becomes a little bit different. But Movsar Evloev is obviously the number 1 contender. But this is what's going to happen, man. These guys are going to see how far they can push. And it's going to be on the UFC to lay their foot down and not allow these new guys to just walk all over them, man. And like I said, Silva needs to chill here. I don't blame him, right? If I'm going in there and I'm creating all this buzz and I beat up on Bryce Mitchell and all this and that, gets headlines, gets people talking. So, but again, UFC's got to put their foot down, man. And then here we go. Yair Rodriguez saying he wants Volkanovski. So in case you've been, living under a rock, Volk goes out there, he picks apart Patricio Pitbull, made it look really easy, right? And I expected more from Patricio Pitbull in that fight, but I feel like a lot of that had to do with Yair's a tricky matchup. He's a tricky matchup. He was motivated, and from what it sounds like, Hunter Campbell in the UFC, they were like, look, man, you go out there and you beat up on this dude who they're saying is one of the best Bellator fighters of all time, and you make us look really good. We'll give you a title shot, dog. Go out there and make us look good. We'll give you a title shot. That's what it seems like to me, because I can't think of any other reason the UFC, other than the fact that we have the big Guadalajara card and all these different things to where they would want Yair Rodriguez in a title opportunity position. So this is crazy. He just got subbed by Brian Ortega. He got beat up by Volkanovski. And now as Volk is, goes out there and beats Diego Lopez. Volk's, I think, 36 now? And now we want to run this back? Movsar Evloev is next, as we all know. But the fact that you shouldn't be, you need to stack some W's, man. You need to stack some W's. You don't just get to go out there and beat up a guy who, yeah, he was really good outside the UFC, but there's questions. How do those guys translate through the organization? How do they translate? If Yair could go out there and beat another guy in the top 5, book him versus Diego Lopez on the Guadalajara card. And if he wins, I could see, at that point, there's a better argument for a title shot. Right now, no. Absolutely not. And to say, I don't want to talk about Movsar or whatever, he's coming from a win streak, but I hear from the UFC, you only have to come back from a win. Volkanovski and I had a background of fighting for the belt. I wasn't able to come with the win, but this time I'm pretty sure I will be able to come with the win. Yair wants another crack at the champ after his win at UFC 314. So that's what we have to do now. If you are, a top contender, top ranked guy in the division, you could lose a couple fights in a row, but then as long as you go out there and even if you win a fight by decision, even if it's convincing, whatever, you go out there and win one fight, you're right back in the title conversation. The only rule of thumb that we've really seen that apply to is someone that is a massive star like a Conor McGregor. When Jorge Masvidal was on his run, back in the day when he beat up Till and Askren and Diaz, and when you're like a massive star, the UFC tends to make certain exceptions. The problem is when they do that, everyone seems to think like they are the top dog in their division. I get the confidence and I understand, like I said, that fighters are going to try to see what they can get away with. The UFC's got to put their foot down, man. In my opinion, it should be Yair versus Diego on that Guadalajara card, 5-round co-main event, or something like that. That's a massive fight. Winner, I could see them again, would be Lopez coming off of a loss to Volkanovski. But the winner puts himself in a good position, especially Yair if he could get a win. But that's the fight to make. There's momentum behind that. All the trash talk between the two at the press conference, that's the fight to book. But no way should Yair be getting a title shot right now. Stop the BS, man. Then we have Garry. Ian Machado Gary's out there saying, I want a title shot. When I knock out Prates, and I've just come off the back of that really, really close fight with Shavkat, and Shavkat is injured because of it, who do you want to see Belal fight next? Sean Brady? If you're the UFC and you're deciding on a pay-per-view and who the main event is, it's obvious. It's me. I get the attention. I get people riled up. Love me or hate me. I'm the best in the world, and it's my job to show it. I mean, I can't think of a bigger load of BS that if I've ever heard it, man. I mean, this is absolutely crazy from Ian Garry. And I know Ian Garry's one of those guys. He gets the marketing game. He knows if he says crazy things, it's going to create headlines like this. It's going to get people up in arms. It's going to get people talking. The reality is this. He needs to be worried about Carlos Prates because we've seen Ian Garry. He is a good fighter. He's as game as it gets. I mean, Ian Garry to step in there against Shavkat when a lot of people, were worried about Shavkat and, not everyone's excited to fight Shavkat. He stepped right up. Now he's stepping in on a shorter notice to take on the up-and-coming fighting nerds prodigy that is Carlos Prates, who's been knocking everybody out and looks like a true issue inside the weight class. So we have to give Ian Garry his props and respect there. But to say that no one would want to see Belal versus Sean Brady, I don't know about you. That is absolutely, obviously, if Islam moves up and, I don't think that JDM beats Belal. So if JDM beat Belal, then Islam versus JDM is the fight that's going to happen, it sounds like. But I think Belal wins. And if you're asking me and then the Islam and Belal aren't going to fight each other. So what fight is big and intriguing to me? That is a Brady versus Belal rematch. Considering what Brady just did to Leon Edwards, destroyed him and subbed him and got him out of there. That was an unbelievable performance. That was more impressive than anything Ian Garry has done since he's been in the UFC. And I like watching Ian Garry fight. I think he's slick on the feet. I think he's a solid fighter. I think that he's really rounding out his skill set. And I do think that he's got a good shot against Prates. He needs to worry about Prates here because Ian Garry gets hit. And if he gets touched by Carlos Prates on that chin, man, Carlos is putting his ass out. But again, winnable fight for Ian Garry. Very game for taking the fight. But Ian Garry's talking like he's like McGregor or something here. Like he's some sort of massive draw. He's not a massive draw. I mean, he's a name and he's definitely someone that, draws some eyeballs to the division for sure. I'm not going to doubt that, but this is crazy. This is crazy. You lost to Shavkat. Yeah, it was a close fight. Was it the greatest fight, right? It was still very competitive. And you kind of showed that you went in there, you could hang with Shavkat Rakhmonov, who was supposed to be fighting Belal for a title and all these different things. But at the end of the day, you're coming off of an L, man. Go out there and you beat Carlos Prates. I still don't think he's in position. We got Buckley who's in position, right? And I thought Buckley was a guy that could have possibly have gotten a title shot. And then, Ian Garry sees Belal steamrolling JDM. And I'm kind of, steamrolling. I don't know. I think it depends, right? Because JDM's been out for a while. He had an injury and all those different things. But if Jack can stop the takedowns and control the pace of the fight and keep it on the feet, Jack has a chance with anyone at 170 pounds when it comes to the striking. He's got probably the best boxing in the division. But the improvements that we've seen from Belal, in particular with the striking, but also backed by the crazy pace and cardio that Belal has with the wrestling, it's a really hard fight for JDM, man. And I don't think JDM wins. I mean, I think Bilal is able to beat him. I think that his pace is going to be an issue. So I kind of agree with Garry here. I agree with him. And then so basically Garry is eyeing a fight with Bilal. Like, I think it's going to be Brady and Muhammad in the rematch. That is the fight that I would like to see in particular. Or Buckley. I think Buckley's put himself in position with the streak that he's on to get a title shot. But I don't know, Ian Garry. Unless he goes out there and starches Carlos Prates, then maybe people are going to be kind of parading for him to get a title shot. I still think he has more work to do. Even though he's taken these fights that other people are nervous to take, we got to respect that, though. Sean Brady loves mentioning my name. I swear I'm in that man's head. He looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. He tried to shoot an ugly takedown, and I'd put a knee through his nose, and he'd never be able to breathe again. Sean Brady would destroy Ian Garry. I think he would. Because I think that Leon Edwards is better than Ian Garry. Maybe I'm wrong. That's a fight that I would have loved to have seen. I don't know if we're ever going to see it. Sean Brady is looking like an absolute nightmare in the welterweight division right now. I think the hardest fight for Sean Brady is obviously the rematch with Bilal. That's the reason I want to see that fight, because we've seen Sean really, really improve, and we've seen Bilal improve. So I think that that's one of those rematches that down the line, it ends up being a better fight than it was the first time. But I don't see how Ian Garry beats Sean Brady. I mean, Sean Brady's boxing is really tightened up. It's gotten really good. And his jiu-jitsu game and the way that when he takes guys down, he's able to control them and search for submissions, top of the food chain, man. I think Sean Brady destroys Ian Garry. I don't know what Ian Garry's talking about. I know he's confident here or whatever. If I'm Ian, that's a fight that I wouldn't be too excited to take, man. I think Sean Brady's a serious issue for him. Then this was recently here. Ian Garry feels disrespected that he didn't even get a call from the UFC to fight Bilal for the title. To not even get a call. I felt it was disrespectful. I was just seething when I found out that they were giving it to a guy who's been injured and hasn't fought in a year. I would have been less annoyed if they had given it to Buckley. It's just irritating to me that I didn't even get the respect of a call. So here's the thing. The UFC, they do whatever they want. That's the bottom line. They don't care about your feelings. They're going to do what they want at the end of the day. And Gary's coming off of a loss to Shavkat. Whether the fight was close or not, he's coming off of a loss. Now, I agree with him here. The fact that I thought Buckley was the one that should have gotten the opportunity. I was saying that Buckley is someone that is really, for some reason, still really flying under the radar. But, JDM, you could say he's been sidelined, but he's a guy that's finishing people, man. He's exciting to watch. No one has figured out the puzzle since he's been in the UFC. Gilbert Burns almost did, and then JDM got back to his feet, landed a knee, and was able to get Burns out of there. So JDM's exciting. He's pushing the pace. He's knocking people out, and he's got people truly thinking that he can go out there and win the title. And that's what the UFC, I think, is looking for right now, is because, look, Bilal's a hard fight, man. He's a hard fight for anybody, and I don't see how Ian Garry beats him. Of course, there's a shot because it's a fight, anything can happen, but if you were going to say who's got a better shot at beating Bilal, is it Ian or JDM? I mean, I feel like it's probably JDM. I feel like it's JDM, the boxing, the style, and, again, styles make fights, and, he's got knockout power. He's got the boxing. He has the ability to hang with anybody in the weight class, so he's undefeated. He's a guy that's been on a roll. Ian Garry just lost it to Shavkat. And I know he took the fight and stepped up and all those different things, but the UFC does what they want at the end of the day. They do what they want at the end of the day. And in my opinion, I think Bilal wins. And then I think we see Bilal versus Brady too at some point. I think that's a great matchup. Something's brewing with Ilia Topuria, man. Something's brewing. And we've heard all sorts of different headlines like, could it be Islam versus Ilia? Could it be Ilia versus Oliveira? Could it be, who knows? But the fact that over the past few months, we had Ilia Topuria go on Full Send. We just recently had him go on PBD Podcast. Today, the episode just dropped at the time of me recording this. I'm excited to check this out and listen. He was just on Joe Rogan. You think that it's some sort of coincidence that Ilia Topuria is going on all these massive podcasts right now? I mean, I don't think it is. I think you're out of your mind if you think it's some sort of coincidence. It seems to me like the UFC has something that they are trying to get done. The question is, will it get done? And the question is, what is it going to be? I think there's a massive fight ahead for Ilia Topuria. I think there's a massive fight ahead. And I've said before, people out there are saying, Patty's the next Conor. He's the guy that the UFC is really trying to build. I don't think that's true, and I don't think that's correct. In my opinion, it's this guy. I think Ilia Topuria is who the UFC is looking at as the possible next McGregor. They see the boxing. They see the knockout power. He's undefeated. He says, I'm going to knock this guy out. He goes in there and does it. He speaks Spanish. He speaks English. Ilia Topuria has the look. He has the style. He has the swag. I think the UFC is putting their eggs in the Topuria basket for him to become one of the faces of the promotion. He's already a big star. He's really working himself up. I think that this is the UFC putting him on tour here to really start to build something up. But make no mistake about it, I think that the UFC is putting the eggs in the basket of Ilia Topuria to kind of be that big name that takes over as like a massive star in the organization. That's my opinion. I've been saying it for a while. I don't think it's Paddy. We have other big stars, right? We have Islam, we have Hamzat, we have other big guys, Pineda. We got big names, but I think that they see a lot of potential in Ilia Topuria. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but him going on all these podcasts right now doesn't seem like a coincidence to me. And then a couple more here about with the Topuria stuff. Javier Mendez, who I really, really like. I like Team Khabib, Javier Mendez. And I think Javier Mendez is a great coach. I would even say basically a legendary coach, right? Over at AKA, the fighters that they've had over there, DC, Cain Velasquez, Rockhold, Josh Thompson, Khabib, and, because, with the cross training and all these different things, the fighters that have came through that gym, it's been spectacular. And Javier believes Paddy Pimblett is worthy of a title shot. Paddy is ready to face anybody. His credentials and his winning record in the UFC speak for themselves. If they give him the next title shot, he deserves it. Is he worthy? Yes. He has all of England and America behind him. So here's the issue with this, right? And I think that this is where a lot of people were kind of throwing their arms up is, you're going to say that Paddy Pimblett, after beating an older Michael Chandler, the fight before that beating an older Bobby Green after we saw Mauricio Rufy just starts Bobby Green, you think that he's worthy of a title shot, but you don't think Ilia Topuria, who is undefeated, coming off of back-to-back KO victories over Volkanovski and Holloway. Granted, it's a new weight class, even though Topuria KO'd JakeGerberMMA at 155 inside the organization. You just create a bad situation when you're saying Paddy and his credentials, like he's a guy that should have it, but then you're kind of putting it out there like, well, so you're kind of neglecting Topuria and what he's done? Like maybe that's just me looking at it the wrong way, but that's kind of how I'm seeing it. Ilia Topuria, he's more, in my opinion, he's someone that should get a title shot over Pimblett. I know what he was doing was in a little bit of a different weight class. What he's done is far better than what Pimblett's done. I get that it's different weight classes, but so you create this avenue when you start saying stuff like this, right? But then we have this here. Ilia responds to Khabib's comments. Khabib opens up about Islam's future and potential opponents. I think Arman is a more serious fighter than Topuria. Topuria is good at 145, but we haven't seen him at 55. We actually have knocked out JakeGerberMMA. Let's say Topuria gets an immediate title shot at 155 and Islam beats him. So basically he was a nobody at 155. Islam beat a guy who was a nobody at 155. Islam doesn't have much time left either. He'll be 34 soon, so he doesn't want to fight someone like Topuria or Volkanovski or someone like Moicano stepping in on short notice. Islam wants to fight real contenders, guys who have been at 155 for a long time. If you're moving up, earn it. So we've seen different guys move up, and a lot of the time they don't vacate the title. So if Ilia hung on to the title and was just going for a double champ fight, maybe people would feel different. I don't know, because we saw McGregor do it. We saw, we've seen Daniel Cormier, guys, granted they defend the belt quite a few times. I think that hurts Topuria a little bit, but Ilia versus Islam is a massive fight. And I feel like a lot of people are discrediting what Ilia has done. Now, granted, that is at 145 pounds. But it's a massive fight. It's a massive fight. Topuria is a dangerous fighter. But I also understand a little bit what's being said here in the fact that, say Islam beats Topuria and then he ends up not being any good at 155, which I think Topuria could beat most of the guys inside the rankings. I think that Arman is a very, very difficult fight for Ilia. I think he's still capable of winning. I think Oliveira's a hard fight, but I still think that Topuria is capable of winning. You could be the one that takes the O from Ilia Topuria. He's the guy that the UFC is trying to push as the next big thing. You could take his O and you could beat him. That's kind of how I look at it. And I think a prime Topuria win over him, that is massive, in my opinion, for the resume of Islam Makhachev. And if it's not going to be Topuria, then say we want the Arman rematch. The problem is, that was supposed to happen, and it's no fault of Islam's. Arman got injured, had to pull out. But I think the UFC is not going to be too excited to just throw Arman right back in there, considering he pulled out the day before the fight. At the end of the day, I would love to see Islam versus Topuria because I think it's a massive fight. I'm a fan of both guys. I think that, Islam's pound for pound number one. I think Ilia is right behind him in the pound for pound. It's a massive fight. Topuria is dangerous. Islam is the bigger, bigger guy. I think that he is incredibly well-rounded. We've seen Topuria. We know he has a good ground game. We haven't seen it tested too much inside the UFC. I know Bryce Mitchell had some moments where he took him down, and that's where we're like, well, what if that's Islam, right? So there's this intrigue. There's, Topuria's, knocking everybody out. Islam's beating everybody at 155 right now. I think it's a massive fight. And then we have Ilia saying, Khabib knows I'm the one to take the belt from Islam. Only reason he doesn't want Islam to fight me. So we have people on both sides of the fence. People are like, we want this fight because this is the best fight to happen. And then we got people saying Ilia doesn't deserve it. We got people saying that, Islam is ducking. At the end of the day, whoever the UFC offers Islam, I think that that's the fight that's going to happen. Because I think that this comes down to the UFC at the end of the day. Fighters can give their input. But I don't believe that there's really any fighter in the promotion right now. Maybe you could argue John Jones that has the pull to basically say what they're going to do next. I think Islam still has some sort of input if I had to guess. But I think the UFC is going to do what they want at the end of the day. And given the fighter that Islam is, I think that he will fight anyone that the UFC asks him to fight. And at the end of the day, like I said, I lean towards Islam getting it done. But Topuria, no question that the guy is dangerous. Like I said, I see what everyone is saying. I'm coming from the angle of it's a massive fight. In my opinion, it is the two best fighters in the sport. I would love to see the two best guys go at it because what we've learned about the UFC, if these fights don't get booked when they should happen, sometimes they slip away and we never get them. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.